Okay, we're having a great time here. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is faced with an uphill task to uplift, save the Nigerian economy as Nigeria continues to seek a solution to its many economic issues. From the free fall of the naira in the parallel market, the high cost of living, down to the payment of salaries, the nation is in a quagmire due to the unstable economy. The Minister of Budget and National Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, has said the federal government was facing enormous challenges, noting that it was barely managing to pay salaries. Bagudu stated this at the 30th Annual Development Forum organized by the Live Above Poverty Organization, LAPO, in Abuja on Thursday. While emphasizing the need for non-state actors to complement its efforts in national and economic development, the minister, represented by the Director International Cooperation, Dr. Samson Ebimaro, the minister observed that government cannot bear the burden alone. Joining us on the morning show to discuss the situation with the federal government scrapping to pay salaries is Adewale-Smatt Oyerinde, Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA. Welcome to the morning show, sir. Good to see you here today. So, help us.
Thank you for having us. And
good
morning, viewers.
Good. So, help us understand, when the government is struggling with payment of salary and it's taking loans to try and augment the lifestyle, or at least to try and lift some of the poorest of the poor from their poverty by giving them handouts, and we see the state of the economy, where does NECA come in? What are your thoughts about the state of the nation, especially the state of our economy and the state of employers, as well as the employees at the moment?
Well, thank you once again for having us. As you have rightly said, things are not the way everybody expected, or everybody expected to be at this current state. We commend the current administration. The government is a continuum, and the past administration did its bit. The one before it did its bit. But rather than coming out of the hole, we seem to be digging ourselves deeper into the hole until sometime early this year, when the then Minister for Finance came up and said we are using close to 90% thereabout of our revenue to service debt. That showed that we are really in a deep hole at that point, because revenue wasn't coming, and we are owing humongous debt that we are obliged to service. Now the new government came and decided to do things differently with the removal of fuel subsidy, with the new reforms that we have had. But so far, we have not gotten out of the hole. Probably what we have done is to stop digging ourselves deeper into the hole in one context, while the shovel or the digging machines that we used to dig ourselves into the hole previously, we have not thrown them away. Because if we had thrown them away, some level of profligacy that we've seen, some level of fiscal indiscipline that we've seen, I think we should have addressed that, and addressed that quickly. So far, the economy is not out of the woods. There's still a lot more to be done by the government to arrest the downward slide. We commend the social safety net, the program that has been commissioned, the 25,000 to 15 million households, because that will naturally feed back into the production level. It stimulates consumption, and once you stimulate consumption, naturally you stimulate production, and that will help you to keep the economy going in some instance. But you still have to address all the issues of how we spend, the fiscal indiscipline that we currently are seeing. From the employer side, I really want to commend the resilience and doggedness of employers. Things are very bad. Government have made promises. The president has made commitments to support the organized private sector. We are still waiting to see the manifestation and the actual implementation of those promises that the president made. We commend the Oyerinde Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms. We hope that their work will be rounded off and they will be allowed to implement the recommendations that will come from that committee. But by and large, the challenges remain as it were, probably much more than we had expected, and organized businesses are actually struggling to breathe.
All right, Mr. Oyerinde, thanks. But let's situate the issue, the challenges, properly to the challenges in paying salaries. What the Minister Bagudu said clearly was that there is no money anywhere. That's what he said. And then he went on to say that, to attribute part of the problem to growing population, to revenue deficit, to huge expenditure, and that the government, the federal government, cannot bear the burden alone. So he's therefore calling, urging NGOs to help cover spaces that the federal government alone can't deal with. What's your assessment of what Minister Bagudu has said from, an employers association's point of view, bearing in mind that the immediate past Accountant General, Anamekwe Nwabuoku, did say, just a few months ago, that we borrow to pay salaries, that government's income is challenged. I know that you may have kind words for what the government is doing and that it is important to encourage them, but we are faced with a situation. It is not a new situation. We recall when even Okonjo-Iweala in 2015 did say that the Jonathan administration borrowed to pay salaries. But this is more than 8 years after Okonjo-Iweala said that. But now we have the Minister of Budget and Planning saying that there is no money anywhere. How scared should an ordinary Nigerian be, from your own assessment?
The government cannot abdicate its responsibilities.
Okay.
If there are no money, the reality of no money should be obvious to all. And if there are no money, there are reasons why there are no money. I think this trend or pattern of excuses, this pattern of shifting the blame, I think it won't help anybody. The administration, before they came in, knew the challenges that we faced in time past. They knew the challenges. Obviously, the challenges that they are going to face, we are all aware of the risk that we currently face. So it will be uncharitable for the minister to say we don't have money now and we are raising up our hands and calling on heaven to help us. We should help ourselves. Why are we having paucity of revenue? Is it that we are not selling oil? If we are not selling crude, why are we not selling crude? If there are oil thefts here and there, why are we not addressing it? The issues that we should address as government, the issues that we should address as individuals, I think we should not be shy to address them. Passing the ball, calling for help where help doesn't exist, I think we know help either government or the private sector. For us in the private sector, we think the government knows what to do. We have our OPEC quota. I think we should quickly ramp up our quota that OPEC has given us to sell. If our refineries are not working, why are they not working? Those are the critical questions that they should provide answers to. If they are not working and we are spending humongous amount to import petroleum products, why are we doing that? Who are the people sabotaging the refineries? We cannot continue to complain about the effects while we are feeding the cost. You are complaining that, look, there is paucity of cash, and we are actively feeding the reasons why there's paucity of revenue. I think the government cannot shift the blame. We cannot call on CSOs that also need help. You cannot call on the organized private sector that is also needing help to come and help government that is in the position to help all of us. And it would be unfortunate, really, if the assumption, or if directly or indirectly, the call for help to non-state actors and the private sector will be in the context of increasing taxes. It will be suicidal to think of increasing taxes at this point. Let me give you this data that just came up of recent. It's no more news that organized businesses pay over 60 different taxes across board every year from the federal to state and local government level. Of recent, a credible data came out from our platform that production volume in the private sector has dipped by 13%. That's at Q1 2023. Sales volume dipped by 13.6%. Employment reduced by 5.7% in Q2. Capacity utilization contracted by 5% in Q1 and nosedive by 5.6% in Q2. Altogether, capacity utilization in most industries in the manufacturing sector is less than 55%. Investments in manufacturing shrunk by 5.6%. Shipment and logistic costs spiked by 16.3% in the private sector. This is coupled with the issue of increasing interest rates, high energy costs, exorbitant and multiple taxes, the forex issue that we have now that has messed up the projections of most businesses in the private sector. So who exactly is the minister asking for help? Is it from organized businesses that is struggling to breathe now? Is it from labor, organized labor that is also struggling to live, to get wages above the minimum wage? So it's a reality that government must face, and they must come up with credible and workable solutions to those issues. Creating panic everywhere that there's no money. Well, we heard of recent that the National Assembly members they are going to buy cars of 460 million for each of them. I will say there's no money. Well, we've not dealt with fiscal indiscipline across board. I will say there's no money. I think it's a rhetoric that should stop, and government should take responsibility and address these issues and address them quickly.
Okay. When we look at the number of Nigerians who are working in the public sector, they're not that many compared to the rest of Nigerians. They don't constitute a large percentage. So that means if the government is saying we're struggling to pay salaries, they're not even talking about the states. They're talking about the federal government. So we're talking of a minimal number of people that they're struggling to pay salaries. Now let's extrapolate and say if the government cannot pay that small number of Nigerians their salary, then how does the government now create what people like yourself and others who are in the private sector, because we always say, either here or everywhere around the world, that the government's job is not to run business, but to create an enabling environment for business to thrive and to prosper. So what are the things that you think the government can do as we wrap up this conversation now? What are the things that the government can do to create that enabling environment for ease of doing business, for making sure that businesses can thrive and prosper, despite all of the difficulties and challenges, like you said, with petrol scarcity, with petrol pricing, with the cost of buying dollars, which a lot of business need for even the smallest of things, infrastructure, equipment that they need to get from abroad. So help us understand top 3 things that the government can do to make that enabling environment one that creates possibility and potential for businesses to thrive and prosper in Nigeria today.
You know, one critical issue that we face currently is the issue of forex. You know, businesses at the beginning of the year, you all make projections, you have your budget, you do your assumptions, and currently the forex issue has made nonsense of whatever assumption any business currently have. And the issue is, why do we have challenges with forex? One of those reasons is because we are not generating enough revenue for forex. Now, if you know the challenge, then you have solved the problem. If the issue is we are not generating enough forex because we are not selling much of crude, then why are we not selling much of crude? If we are not gaining much forex because we are progressively and consistently becoming a totally import-dependent nation, then why can't we address the issue of our local manufacturing? So one of the first things we want government to do is to provide an environment that enables local production. Look, if we don't produce what we consume, we're never going to address the issue of forex. If we don't produce what we consume, if we are not progressively becoming an export-oriented nation, we are not going to solve the issues that we have concerning forex. So first, government should provide an environment that enables local manufacturing. Government should do whatever it takes to ensure infrastructure development. Look, we have borrowed and borrowed even for infrastructure in time past. But if you look around, those infrastructures are not there. Power is still a challenge. Road is still a challenge. I mentioned the issue of logistics a few minutes ago. It's an issue they should address. Make the environment conducive for local production, local manufacturing. That is the first thing we need to do. And in addressing that, you need to deal with the issue of the regulatory environment. Because most regulators currently are more focused on generating revenue rather than providing an environment that enables the businesses to thrive. So in the performance indicators from agencies and ministries, one of those that we ask the federal government to put in is how many businesses does your agency, as the DG or the executive secretary of those agencies, how many businesses did you promote? How many investments were you able to attract because of your activities? Those should be key parameters for them to look at. So first, I said infrastructure development to make sure that we produce locally. If we don't produce locally, we ain't going to solve the issue of forex. Secondly is to address the regulatory and legislative issues. Even currently, we have humongous challenges with the legislators. Invitations every day to organize businesses to come to Abuja to come and for one investigative hearing or the other. The same investigation, the same audit that executive agencies have carried out. Those are disincentives to an average business. And we also need government to also address that for us. And lastly is the issue of energy cost.
All right.
Diesel, fortunately, government reduced or suspended the 7.5% on diesel, but more needed to be done because the major expenses of businesses, they go into into production of their own energy, and they go into forex. So if government can address those three quickly, an environment that enables local manufacturing, an environment, a regulatory environment that is pro-business and not anti-business, and then address the critical issue of energy cost. Those will be fundamental issues that government should address. And lastly, pardon me, you said three, but let me add one more. The issue of taxation. Multiplicity of taxation is also stifling. I want government to deal with that and deal with that also quickly.
All right, very quickly, Mr. Oyerinde, before we go, I thought that we should be fair so that it doesn't appear as if federal government is the only guilty one. But as you're aware, the states are also guilty. There was a report recently that 12 states out of the 36 in Nigeria borrowed a total of 46 billion from three commercial banks, which of course was part of the CBN's salary bailout, to augment salary payment between January and June of this year. That came in spite of slight improvement in what was shared, to all the 36 states. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts as to how states can get it right? In few words, that's one. And then very quickly, your predecessor did say at the time, Mr. Segun Oshinowo, that, he was of the opinion that the no work, no pay policy of the federal government should apply even in private sector. But today, we have President Tinubu using the prerogative of mercy to clear half of the 8 months salary backlog for ASU. So if NECA, on the one hand, is saying, let's apply, the no work, no pay rule to private sector, but then government that ought to be doing it are now saying, okay, we can use prerogative of mercy. We can clear the backlog. What are your thoughts on those? Very quickly, please.
On the first issue you mentioned, beyond the issue of the states, the states are in a dire state. The states are in a dire state because, it's another analysis entirely for the issues of the states. it will interest you to know that over 20 states are not paying the minimum wage, the 30,000 minimum wage are not currently paying. Over 23 or 25 states, about 25 states are not logged into the contributory pension scheme for their workers currently. So it's a dire issue for the state. And for each of those states, if you go around this country, we are so endowed with natural resources. It takes a good leadership, a focused leadership to address the issue that the state currently have. For the state, it's self-inflicted. You can't be going to Abuja every other month to go and queue for allocation. Everybody must maximize the resources that they have in their states to up the living standard of citizens of that state. So for the state, it's self-inflicted, and it also goes back to the citizens of the state to start asking questions. We are borrowing. What are we using the money that we are borrowing to do? We have natural resources. Why are we not extracting? Why are we not maximizing those potentials? It's self-inflicted, and the governors should take absolute responsibility for the state for the current state of their state. Now, for the second issue you mentioned on the issue of the federal government paying the backlog of the issues of the salaries of workers that didn't work. Now, for the federal government, it's a different dynamics compared to the private sector. For the government has the potential to borrow and overborrow from whatever sources. The private sector doesn't have that privilege. The private sector's loan, doesn't go on strike. If you borrow as a private sector organization and you borrow from the bank, whether your business runs or not, the interest on the loan will continue to run. The loan doesn't go on strike. And that is why for the private sector, the dynamics of engagement is quite different. The government have allocation, it can get loans, it can sell crude oil, it can do whatever it needs. It can even borrow from the central bank through the ways and means that we saw in the last administration to fund its carelessness, to fund its excesses.
Yeah.
The private sector doesn't have that luxury. It doesn't have that privilege. And those were the reasons why the issue of no work, no pay came up. Now, whether it's no work, no pay, whether it's strike issues, those issues can always be addressed by issue of negotiation and also conversation between labor and employers. But those issues of no work, no pay, when push comes to shove, and the survival of the business is now compromised, then those options will definitely become what you look at on the table.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's so great to have you today on the program. Thank you for your contribution.